welcome to this episode of Mama Thrive, and in this episode we want to talk about a different take on handling those ongoing conflicts in your family, whether it's an internal conflict or an external conflict, or something that you just wish would be over with and it didn't keep repeating itself all the time. That's what we're going to talk about.
Those ones that you wish were over with, but you keep repeating as well because there's something in there that you're really needing. Like you're not about to really change your position or do something differently because you're really needing something, but there's constantly conflict around it.
Okay, so before we talk about the concepts that we want to talk about, Kara and I are both going to share an example, and then you can kind of get a feel for what we're talking about before we start actually talking about the concept itself. So the example, I'll give my example and then Kay, you give your example. So they seem on the surface, when we talk about these examples, they'll seem like completely different issues, but underneath it's the same. So the example that I'm going to give is around night weaning your child. And I remember this with Maddie, my daughter. And there was a time where, like, I nursed for a very long time, so we did the full term extended breastfeeding, and there was a time when there were a few times where I really wanted to night wean because I just really wanted to sleep. That was what was going on for me. I just really wanted to sleep, and my daughter was a huge nurser, and we're talking 2 and 3, like, you know, those sorts of ages, and I really just wanted to sleep through the night at some point, and I was getting resentful about that. But I had a lot of internal conflict within me around that too, because the breastfeeding relationship was really pivotal to our connection strategies and our relationship. And so there was a part in me that was always very torn around it, and I'd kind of test the waters a little bit, and if she reacted really strongly, I'd go, okay, we're not ready. And I did that a few times, and that I would recommend doing that anyway. Like, you want it to be a partnership wherever you can. But what was really going on for me was my internal piece of, I really want to sleep, but I also really want to keep the nursing relationship going. I so wanted it to be her choice. I didn't want it to be my choice, but I had needs, and I was in a lot of internal conflict. And so I didn't know when was the right time to night wean. And that was my example. And I'm not going to tell you about the solution, because I'm going to tell you about the solution when we talk about the further bit in the video. So do you want to give your example now too?
I do, yeah. Mine is when my children were a little older. It was probably 2 years ago, I'd say. And I had this funny dynamic conflict within myself and externally where I would feel really guilty about me taking space for myself. Especially if it wasn't like something really pre-planned or pre-structured, or where I had some appointment with somebody else, and especially if I was on my computer, say if I wanted to do some work for myself. And to the point where I felt funny about doing that, even if my children were really self-contained and enjoying what they were doing. I kind of had this idea that I couldn't go and do my thing. I had to, like, maybe make food for them or clean up after them or check in with whether they wanted to do something with me. But really I wanted to go and do stuff for myself, as they do as well, as they want to go and do stuff for themselves and be autonomous. So I had this internal conflict where I really wanted that, but then I felt bad about having that. So I often would go and do it, but feel funny about it. And my internal conflict reflected externally to the point where every time, even if my children were happy doing what they were doing, if I went to do what I was doing, they would get resentful and grumpy and tell me I never do anything with them, or it's almost like they would mirror my guilt to me. They'd bring it straight up to me and like make it really, really hard for me to claim my space and to do my own thing. And so I will go into the solution and into how I shifted all of that after we explain what this whole concept is. But for now, just that how I had all that internal conflict and it became external conflict, and it just became this dynamic where I didn't have what I wanted in any direction.
So Kaya's touched on a really pivotal piece, and it comes up in the nursing as well, and the night weaning piece, that when you have internal conflict within yourself, your children will mirror it back to you externally. And I've seen this happen over and over and over and over and over again in my family. Kaya's seen it happen in hers. We've seen it in mothers that we've coached over and over and over again. If you have internal conflict within yourself, if you have not reached internal resolution or congruency, which is what we want to talk about today, your children will absolutely hold that up to you over and over and over again, and there will be this dynamic, ongoing dynamic. So in my case, my daughter would resist night weaning, and the more I felt conflicted about it, the stronger her reaction would be about it externally. For Kaya, her children would absolutely stand up and claim that part of her that was feeling guilty and own that for her totally, and say, you never play with us, and why are you doing anything with us, and you should be here with me, and all of that. Our children do that time and time and time again for us. And what it is they sense the lack of congruency within us, and they point it out to us, they hold it up to us, so that we can find congruency. If we're aware of it, we can go, whoa, okay, what's incongruent? Where am I not congruent?
And by lack of congruency, we mean we're saying one thing, but there's a part of us that's really wanting something else. So for example, with me, I so wanted to just have some space for myself and do my own thing, just like they did, just as much as they did. But there was such a huge part of me that was like, that's wrong, I can't do that, and that mismatch is the incongruency.
Yeah, and so for me, same thing, the incongruency. I really wanted to just sleep for like a solid block of more than like an hour or two, and at the same time I wanted to honour that nursing relationship, and I wanted it to be her choice, and I wanted to hold that connection. So I had some confliction. So I had all that confliction internally, and you can probably think of plenty of examples where that's the case for you too, because as mothers it's quite common for us to want two things at the same time. Okay, so the first piece of this solution is to be aware of this concept of congruency within yourself. And that's truly important, because that congruency, whether it's congruency between your desires and your wants and the direction that you want to travel, or whether it's congruency between your energy and your words, all of any mismatch in congruency, your children will highlight to you. So that's just an awareness piece. Oh, like a congruency somewhere here within me. Now, the way that you reach congruency, there are many, many, many ways, and every situation is individual and unique, and you would want to find space to sort through that yourself, or have a coaching conversation around that and sort that out. But we can give you the solutions that we came up with so that you can see a couple of examples.
Okay, so with my example, I got to this point where I realised what I was doing and that conflict within me, and it came about because I started looking at how I celebrate my children doing what they love, and that plays out in the fact that I choose to have my children at home. We naturally learn, we unschool, and it's really important for me that they follow their passions. And I realised that I wasn't doing that for myself, and I realised what example that was setting for them. And one day I really saw clearly my daughter mirroring that incongruency back to me, to the point where I watched how content she was, and then I stopped kind of doing stuff for her and going and doing my own thing, and she switched from being content to, Mum, you never do anything for me, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh my God, she's mirroring this thing to me. And I made this commitment to myself in that moment that I would claim my space and claim what I love, and do what I love in as many moments as possible, just as I want my children to do the same. And I voiced that to them. I was really clear. I was like, hang on, there's nothing wrong with me going and doing my thing right now. It's actually awesome. It's just as awesome as you guys doing your own thing. And I really claimed my space and made it clear that actually I'm gonna celebrate me going and doing my own thing, and I don't need to pander to them. Like, it's fine for me to do that too. And they really got it. And in that moment, something shifted between us where they could see me claiming me, and they didn't put up a fuss about me going and doing my own thing anymore because I became congruent.
So in my case, I'm trying to remember because it was like nearly a decade ago now, but for me, same thing. At the end of the day, you have to create resolution within yourself, whatever that looks like for you, so that you do become congruent. And in my case, it was a journey for me to reach a place where I felt this could still be partnership, that I still had a really strong connected relationship in a lot of other areas, and that I needed to really feel okay about it within myself. And there were probably other strategies that I implemented that are surface ones that are, not, I might have upped my nursing in the day, or, all those things that I could probably try and think back on. But that's not really what it was about. It was that I truly felt resolved within myself, that I felt aligned with my values, that I felt this was okay, and this was, as Kaya said, this was okay to claim this. This was okay for me to feel resolved about this. And as soon as I did that, as soon as I got resolved within myself that this was the right direction, that this was the right way for us to go together in our relationship as a partner, there was no struggle at all, interestingly. I mean, I should point out she was about 3. She wasn't a newborn or anything, but we didn't even really have we would have talked about it and had discussions, but there was no point where I suddenly said to her, I'm really resolved around this now. I feel really congruent. We didn't have a conversation about that, but she absolutely sensed it. And
it's the energy.
It's the energy that you put out. And she just, in fact, that first night she just slept straight through. There was no discussion about it at all. There was nothing. They sense that energy of congruency, and that when you're that congruent, it has a natural sense of leadership to it. And your children respond to that.
They deeply respect it.
Yeah. So we hope that helps if you are having these ongoing struggles within your family, that you look at it from a congruency place and look to see, are you actually truly congruent in whatever that struggle is for you? And find a way to become congruent, to feel resolved and to feel truly at peace within yourself. And that's the key. And your children will mirror that congruency, either lack of or when you come into congruency.
And we'd love to know how you go with that. We'd love to hear the topics and what shifts. So email us or post it in the comments or however works for you. But just stay in touch. Till next time, goodbye. I'm itching my chin.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've gotten so slack and arbitrary now.
It's probably fine.
Okay.
Oh, that was good. I liked that one. I wasn't sure how we were going to do that, but I'm glad we did. Numb foot. It's fully asleep.